Mira Langley lived in silence but painted in storms. Her world had long been reduced to quiet rooms and colors that screamed louder than any voice. Every night, she would set up her easel by the large window of her fourth-story apartment, staring at the mirrored building across the street, her fingers brought to life. Faces she saw through windows, some laughing, some crying, others frozen in thought. It was her way of understanding the world she couldn't hear. One night, while sketching the outline of a woman drinking tea in her robe, Mira noticed something unusual in the adjacent apartment. A man and woman were arguing. Their gestures were violent, frantic. Then suddenly, the man grabbed the woman by the throat. Mira jumped to her feet, knocking over a jar of brushes. She watched, eyes wide, as the woman went limp and collapsed. The man dragged her body out of view, then calmly pulled the curtain shut. Mira stood frozen, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what she had just witnessed. The next morning, Mira didn't sleep. Instead, she sketched. Her hands trembled as she drew the man's face with surgical precision. The square jaw, the uneven ears, the cold eyes that had stared through glass. She added the woman's floral robe, the shadows from the overhead light, and the man's dark gloves. She took the drawing to the police station with a handwritten note. "I saw a murder across from my window." The officer at the front desk looked confused, but polite. An interpreter was brought in, and Mira explained what she saw. A detective, Officer Grant, listened carefully but grew skeptical. "Ma'am, that building's empty. The unit you're talking about has been unoccupied for weeks." Mira insisted. She begged them to look again. Reluctantly, Grant agreed to check the place out. Hours later, he called her. No body, no blood, nothing. The apartment was clean, untouched. Still, Mira swore on everything she had seen. Her drawing was too detailed to be fiction. She knew what she saw, but now a deeper question haunted her. Why did no one else? That night, Mira stared at the building again, hoping for proof, some sign the woman still lived, or the man had returned, but the apartment remained dark. The reflection in the glass building shimmered under the city lights, and Mira caught something odd. Her own window reflected across. For a split second, she thought she saw herself in the scene, standing differently, not sketching, not frozen, moving, acting. That brief glimpse chilled her blood. She tore through her apartment searching for anything off. Her brushes were scattered, not how she left them. Her shoes were muddy, her robe damp. Confused, she sat on the floor and stared at her sketchbook again. Something didn't add up. The face she drew looked familiar. Not from across the street, but from inside her own memories. Flashes began coming back. A scream, a hand raised, her own. Face in a mirror twisted in anger. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to force the memories away, but they clawed back with shocking clarity. Was it possible she hadn't seen a murder? Was it possible she had committed one? Mira visited her therapist the next morning. She brought the sketch and described everything, except the reflection. The therapist mentioned something Mira had long ignored, her history of dissociative episodes. Years ago, she'd been known to sleepwalk under intense emotional stress. Mira had thought the behavior had ended, but now the signs were impossible to ignore. She hadn't just seen something, she may have lived it and erased it from her own mind. That night, afraid to sleep, Mira set up cameras in her apartment. She pointed one directly at her bed and another at the door. She took sleeping pills and waited. Hours passed. She dozed off. When she awoke, the cameras had run out of memory. Frustrated, she checked the footage anyway. Her breath caught. 2:12 a.m. She rose from the bed, eyes open but empty. She walked calmly to the door, left the apartment, and didn't return for almost 40 minutes. When she came back, there were red stains on her robe. The footage ended there. Mira clutched her head and screamed into silence. The next day, Mira returned to the police station with the footage. She didn't try to explain. She simply handed it over along with a new drawing, one of herself, holding a knife. Her interpreter watched nervously as Officer Grant reviewed the footage. Where did she go during those 40 minutes? Muttered. Grant ordered a forensic sweep of Mira's building. Mira sat quietly as investigators combed the apartment complex. Hours later, they returned. In the basement of her own building, behind a disused maintenance door, they found the body of a man, bruised, stabbed, and wrapped in a floral robe identical to Mira's. It wasn't the woman who died, it was her stalker. A neighbor confirmed he'd seen the man lurking around Mira's floor in the past. Self-defense was likely, the detective said, but Mira wouldn't be charged immediately. Her own mind had repressed the trauma so deeply, she recreated the scene in reverse, turning herself into the silent witness instead of the actor. Her art hadn't captured reality, it had protected her from it. Weeks passed. Mira began therapy again, this time not just for her trauma but to confront the fractured pieces of her mind. She moved her easel away from the window and stopped painting faces she didn't know. Her last drawing, the one of herself mid-scream, remained in a locked drawer, unfinished. Her hands trembled every time she considered adding the final stroke, but she didn't. She knew some images were better left incomplete. One morning she opened the window and stared out, not at the glass building but at the sky beyond it. A soft breeze brushed her face. For the first time in weeks, she felt still, not watched, not hunted, just present. She picked up her brush and began to paint again, this time not from fear or memory but from hope. The silent witness had spoken, not in words, but in truth. And now, with the storm behind her, she painted a world she could finally live in.